Hey guys, welcome back. So today at the range, we want to talk about the AR-15, America's rifle. Now, when I was a much younger man, the AR-15 wasn't all that common. Most people shot bolt actions, lever actions, whatever. The AR-15 was the black rifle, and the anti-gunners wanted to take it away. Well, the anti-gunners are still around. They still want to take them away. But in 2022, this truly has become America's rifle. If you don't own one, you probably want to own one. It's just everywhere. Probably more AR-15s are sold every year than any other type of rifle in the United States. Speculation, but being part owner of a gun store, I'm going to go with that. There's an awful lot of AR-15s to the tunes of millions sold every year in the United States. So people love the look of it. They love the ergonomics. It is America's infantry rifle. It's been in service for 60 years, and we just love it. Again, it's America's rifle. But there are gun companies out there that want to engineer things, make things new, make new parts, new ideas, new operating systems, but they want to try to shoehorn it into the AR-15 so that you, the consumer, think you're buying some sort of an AR variant. In reality, it's not even an AR-15 anymore because of all the changes they've made to the gun. And what they should have probably done is just made their own rifle versus trying to shoehorn it into the AR-15 and come up with something like the Robinson Armament XCR or the SIG Virtus. But instead, they crammed it into a rifle and called it an AR-15 variant. And I wish that would just stop. And that's what we're going to talk about in today's video. So before we get started with today's video, guys, if you enjoy our content, please consider becoming part of our Patreon family. If you do that, you'll get early access to videos like this one. You'll have direct access to me. I answer all private communications. We've built a fun online community over there. Again, the link is in the video description below. With all that being said, let's get started with today's video, talking about quit screwing up America's rifle, please. This is a Geisley Super Duty. This is the rifle we opened the video with. This is representative of a modern AR-15. It's direct gas impingement, or more correctly, an internal piston system. There's videos out there talking about that, but most people call this a DI system, so I will for the sake of just simplicity. But it's a direct gas impingement rifle. It has upgraded controls, upgraded charging handle, upgraded bolt stop, bolt release, upgraded handguard with the M-lock free float handguard out here, better ergonomics with the pistol grip and the butt stock. This is just representative of a modern AR-15 that's direct gas impingement. This isn't what I'm talking about. This is actually a nice evolution of the rifle itself, and they have definitely improved upon the gun over the last 60 years or so of the AR-15 M16's existence, and the Super Duty is a good representation of that. Over the years, you guys have seen me use a lot of primary arms optics, everything from red dot sights to magnified optics. And why do I do that? Well, over the years, they've offered very good products for a very fair price. They have fast shipping, outstanding customer support, and that's why you've seen me using those products for so many years. If you guys would like to pick up a magnified optic like you see on this Daniel Defense Mark 12, you can pick up an optic like this one. Just put it in your cart over at pa.com or primaryarms.com, and if you use the code MAC at checkout, MAC at checkout, you'll get a free scope mount with your optic, and that goes for any Primary Arms branded optic. If you pick up an optic that has an integrated mount, use that code MAC at checkout, and you'll get a free Kill Flash ARD for that optic. So please swing by, check out primaryarms.com. This, however, is a 9mm Colt carbine. So early on, Colt would be one of the companies to bastardize the AR-15 and turn it into something it should have never been, and that is a 9mm carbine. And why do I say that? Well, I understand why they were trying to do it, but the end result was a gun that, if you've ever shot one of these, they're very punchy. They jump around more than their 5.56 counterparts. They have a big, massive bolt in there. It's a blowback operating system, has a buffer tube and spring in here, but you have a lot of mass moving around. Does not have a direct gas impingement system in it. It's just simple blowback design. And the gun just jumps all over the place. I've shot these on fully automatic, and I've shot M16s on fully automatic. M16s are quite controllable. These things, the sight picture becomes a blur because they just jump around so much. It's just not well suited for the 9mm cartridge or the 10mm or 45 or whatever you want to cram into it. It's just an abomination. And you can tell that Colt took a standard SP1 off the production line. They actually pinned a block in the lower receiver to accept a modified Uzi magazine to make this gun. In talking to Chris over at Small Arms Solutions, He said that Colt messed around with this thing for quite some time, and even many of the engineers over there thought this was an abomination, should have never happened, and it was never truly perfected. So this is an example of something that should not be. This is a horrible idea. You'd be much better off if you would buy a firearm that was built around the 9mm cartridge or the 45 ACP or 10mm or whatever cartridges it is that you want to run, versus taking an AR-15 and trying to make it into a 9mm or a 10mm or a 45 ACP. So, bad idea, and I don't really like it. Now, there are some more modern AR type-ish guns out there, like the CMMG Banshee with the radial delay system, that take this to a different level. But in general, guns like this, I think, really were just a bad idea. This is the PWS Mark 116, and this is a long stroke gas piston AR. Now, of the gas piston ARs, this is probably the nicest shooting one. Now, I'm an advocate for direct gas impingement. I see no purpose into putting gas pistons into AR-15s. The whole AR-15 was built around the heart of the gun being the DI system. So changing it to a gas piston, you might as well just build a new gun. In the case of the PWS Mark 116, though, this is a very mild shooting gun. This gun shoots as soft as a well-tuned DI gun. That's not always the case with the gas piston AR-15. Most gas piston ARs, take the 416 HK for example, it's much more punchy than a well-tuned direct gas impingement rifle. So that this gun doesn't have that. It doesn't have that punchy feel to it. And that, I believe, is attributable to the fact that it is a long stroke gas piston. So you have the regular bolt and carrier back here, and the gas piston runs all the way out here to the gas block that's out here towards the end of the barrel. And they all move in unison as one piece, long stroke gas piston. But this is an example of, just because you can do something, it doesn't necessarily mean you should do it, because this comes at the expense of being rather clumsy when you go to disassemble it. It runs fine when it's put together. I really enjoy shooting the rifle. I would not take this over a DI gun, but they tried to put this long stroke gas piston system into the gun just to be different, to make it, more marketable, to be a little bit different on the market. These front pins can be a little bit of a pain. You got to wiggle that around. So standard AR-15 fare on the lower there, with some extra controls. But when you go to take the gun apart, you have to pull the T-handle back, pull the bolt and carry unit back, and then you have to pull the T-handle to a certain point, lift it up. Now, people that use these all the time have mastered this and say it's much easier than how I make it look, but it is difficult at best to get these guns apart. There, see what I mean? And now I can pull the gas piston out, and you can see it's a segmented gas piston that, for me, Jason has a better time with it. Just putting it back together and stuff, this will come apart, fall apart sometimes on me. But you can see how it has to be segmented, because the long stroke gas piston is where the normal carrier key would be. You have to take this off if you want to get your charging handle off the bolt and carrier group. So, yeah, it's neat, and it certainly works well. It's accurate, it's reliable, but it's just overly complicated, and it really doesn't solve any problems. All they've done is shoehorned all this stuff into the AR-15 to make it look like an AR-15, so it'd be more marketable to people that want to buy ARs, when in reality, they probably should just design their own weapon system. I get asked all the time, Mac, how can I get involved in the firearms industry? Well, there's no easy answer, but one way you can easily get involved in the firearms industry is to become a certified gunsmith. Modern Gun School has been teaching gunsmiths since 1945. It is accredited college, and also if you're a veteran and have a GI Bill, you can use that to enroll at Modern Gun School. So please swing by and check them out. I have a link in the video description below. The next rifle I want to show you guys is actually just an upper. The lower is an LWRC Ambi lower. That's because the upper is sold on the US market by Wolf. It's imported by Wolf out of Taiwan as the Wolf A1, and it's basically a civilianized T91 service rifle upper that the Taiwanese military uses. And this is a perfect example of it probably shouldn't be done. Now, if you take a look at the South Koreans, for example, They used to use the M16, but then they decided to build their K1 and K2 series of rifles. And you can see the evolution between the K1 and the K2 in the Daewoo series as well. But instead of shoehorning their changes into an M16, they went out and made a whole new weapon system. And that's probably what should have happened here with the T91. Now, people love this thing, and it is known for its reliability, but it's also complex. Let me show you what it looks like. When it comes to its internals, it's a typical short-stroke gas piston system. There's the bolt and carrier, standard T-handle, nothing special there, standard military T-handle. Up here, I have a little puncher that helps me get the pin out. This is where things get a little bit more complex. So I'm going to pop the retainer pin out here for the handguard. Very long retainer pin. Once I pop that out, I can, let's see, just pry the bottom one off and then lift the top handguard off. And this exposes the gas system. And this is just, in my opinion, unnecessarily complex. Although, again, it's known for its reliability and it works really well. To take this apart, I'm going to rotate this piece 1/2 turn, and then I can rotate the gas tube itself to the point where it will take down and come right out of the gun. Here's your gas system on the T91. Take it apart. There's a little locking system here. I'm just going to push down, turn it, and that will free up. This is the gas port itself that goes into the gas block. This is the gas piston and its return spring. The gas piston goes into here. All right, so there's your gas piston and piston spring. And then inside there's even more parts. There's a little piece there, another really heavy-duty spring, and then this little piece that goes on the end. All assembled, it would look something like this inside of the gas tube. So that seems awfully complicated for a short-stroke gas piston system. And again, this is an example of just because you can do it doesn't necessarily mean you should do it. The Taiwanese probably could have built a rifle system around a short-stroke gas piston system and been just as successful. But instead, it was shoehorned into an M16, so they could use, I guess, standard M16 lower parts. I don't know. This is the FMP 556. This is probably the most extreme example of somebody making a whole bunch of changes to a firearm, the AR-15, and still trying to make it look like an AR and possibly even market it as an AR variant. This gun has very little in common with an actual AR-15. It does have a direct gas impingement gas tube on it, so it does share that with the AR-15. It does use an AR-15 trigger group, and it does use AR-15 magazines, and of course, it's chambered in 5.56, has an AR-15 type bolt head, but none of those parts, in terms of the bolt and carrier, are compatible with a standard AR-15. This is probably more like a AR-18 or AR-180 or the BRN-180 in concept. It has a non-reciprocating forward charging handle up here that makes it a little bit different, but the gas system being direct gas impingement makes it different than a BRN 180 or the original AR-18. And they've taken away the receiver extension back here and gotten rid of the buffer tube and spring and the buffer assembly, so you can put folding furniture on here like this Zukov stock. But that means they had to put the recoil spring above the bolt and carrier and the receiver here. And let me show you a little bit of what that looks like. So it hinges open. You see standard AR-15 fire controls in here. But when you look inside of here, instead of a T-handle, you have this end cap. This end cap has a little hole in it, and you'll want to use a tool like an Allen key because you want to push. There's a guide rod and 2 recoil springs in here. You'll want to push pretty far back into the receiver with that Allen key and then slide this end cap off. I'm not going to do it here because it has the possibility of ejecting the 2 recoil springs and guide rod out. When you do take this apart, definitely don't point it at your face when you're doing it and try to capture those parts when you disassemble it. So I'm not going to do it here. But that gives you an idea of how extreme of a change this is. And I wouldn't even call this an AR-15 at this point because you can see the spring and stuff inside of here. And the bolt throw, you can see a little bit of opening right there. You can see the firing pin exposed, but you can see how the system works. So, Yeah, this is probably the most extreme example. So let's show you a couple of firearms that possibly could have just been guns like this that were shoehorned into the AR-15, but wound up being guns themselves, and in their own right, I think, are actually outstanding firearms. Pretty much after we hit the 1930s, anything that could have been done had already been done, and everything we have today is some sort of an amalgamation of what already exists out there. It's just how you package it. The Glock 17 wasn't the first polymer framed handgun out there, but it certainly became the most popular. H&K made a polymer framed handgun before Glock. It just wasn't as popular. So it's all about what bits and pieces you grab and how you put them together and come up with a new gun. And here are three different examples to talk about. So instead of doing a 9mm Colt, which makes very little sense to me, here's an example of a gun that was built to be a 9mm submachine gun. This thing's mostly polymer. This is a B&T TP9. It was originally a Steyr design. B&T acquired the rights to it, made some modifications, but this is one of my favorite 9mm SBRs. This thing is small, lightweight. When it's unloaded, it weighs about as much as a fully loaded 1911, being 45 ACP. That makes this thing super lightweight. This is the B&T can on it, and this is a Primary Arms, one of their new Cyclops sights out that are really, really awesome. So it's flat, dark earth and goes with the gun. I think it looks good on it. It certainly works well, but this is an example of not just trying to make another AR-15 by sticking a 9mm kit in it. This is actually a cool gun. The SIG Virtus. This thing has exploded in popularity. This has evolved over the years, but this is a gun that borrows heavily from the AR-15 M16, but also from the original AR-18, or what some folks may know as the BRN-180, because Brownells now makes an AR-18 type upper that you can buy to pin onto your AR-15 lower. But this gun is its own gun, even though it borrows heavily from other designs. But the Virtus is absolutely amazing. You still have that familiarity of fire controls. The pistol grip is a standard AR-15 type pistol grip. The selector lever is right there where an AR-15 user would expect it to be. It has the AR-15 type trigger mechanism in it, so it feels very familiar, has familiar controls to it. It's just an outstanding gun, but it does not have a receiver extension on it. So this has the ability, has a pick rail back here. You can put all sorts of different things back here on the rear of the gun, because it doesn't have that receiver extension. It hinges open like an AR-15. It borrowed that functionality from the AR. Let me just get a punch here really quick. It hinges open, right? And you can take it apart very easily. It has a T-handle, but it's not compatible with an AR-15. This is not a standard SIG part. I don't think this one is. Yeah, that's one of the Radiant systems. But you can see how it borrows heavily from the AR-18 and the M16 AR-15 with the bolt. So this is an example of a gun that could have easily just been another, heavily modified AR-15, but SIG took it in a different direction and made a brand new firearm, and I absolutely love this thing, and they've become quite popular. So if you guys are out there looking for a new rifle, and you're looking at a heavily modified AR-15 like the PWS or something like that, maybe you should consider just looking at something other than the AR-15. And if you're a manufacturer, please do us all a favor. Instead of trying to shoehorn your new ideas into an AR-15 just so it can look like an AR-15, bring us a new gun to market, something like the XCR. Awesome rifle developed in the early 2000s. There's just all sorts of good ideas out there that I would like to see coming to market that we've seen in the past, and certainly, hopefully, going forward in the future. So if you guys are engineers and designers, get busy and stop using the AR-15 as a basis. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed today's video of me basically complaining about overly modifying the AR-15. If you'd like to support us here at the Military Arms channel, a great way to do that is to become a Patreon supporter. There's a link to our Patreon down in the video description below. Also, right here on YouTube, you got that little join button underneath the video player you're watching right now. Mash that join button, and you can support us right here on YouTube in the age of demonetization. And last but not least, guys, please swing by and check out coppercustom.com. Thank you for 14 years of support. We'll talk to you guys soon.